Maybe, you can explain to us in your own way how Mr. Stanton Friedman, nuclear physicist, local New Brunswick ufological legend, came to be involved in the incredible world of ufology.
Well, it was entirely by accident. In 1958, I was ordering books from a discount book place in New York, Marlborough Books. I needed one more book so I wouldn't have to pay shipping. I'm a cheapskate. There was one, the Report on Unidentified Flying Objects by Air Force Captain Edward J. Ruppel. Now, he had headed Project Blue Book in the early 50s. This was in 1958. The Air Force was co-sponsor of the aircraft nuclear propulsion project that I was working on for General Electric. This wasn't just a paper study now. We were spending, in 1958, we spent $100 million, employed 3,500 people, of whom 1,100 were engineers and scientists.
Wow.
So the Air Force was co-sponsor of that group, and I had three thoughts in mind. One, I'd save the buck from shipping because the book was moved down, marked down from $2.95 a hardcover book to $1.
Wow.
Second, I liked the Air Force. They were a co-sponsor of our program, and if these things were real, and I had no idea since I had no data, maybe they were using nuclear power, which would certainly help our program. And third, at worst, it'd be worth a laugh. It wasn't costing me anything. So I got the book. I read it. It intrigued me. It didn't convince me, but it intrigued me. I shared it with next-door neighbor, Charlie, who was an engineer, 10 years older than I was. I was only 28 at the time. And he was more impressed than I was. Anyway, we both went our separate ways in the wonderful aerospace engineering kind of world. I moved out to California, had a good librarian, read 15 more books, some of which were junk, and if I'd read them first, I probably never would have read another one. Then I had my epiphany, so to speak, at the University of California, Berkeley Library. I lived close to there. I found a copy of Project Blue Book's Special Report number 14. Biggest study ever done for the Air Force, and what was strange was it hadn't been mentioned in any of these 15 books that I had read, and it was chock full of data. I mean, I'm a data man, and boy, 240 charts, tables, graphs, and maps. Wow.
Yeah.
But it also had, this is a privately published version, Dr. Leon Davidson, working at Los Alamos, somehow got a copy. They put out a press release, but they didn't distribute the report. And there was no Freedom of Information Act back then, but it wasn't a classified report, so somehow he managed to get it. Working for Los Alamos probably didn't hurt. And they quoted the Secretary of the Air Force, Donald Quarles, and I sure quarrel with Quarles, in the press release. They said on the basis of this report, they didn't give it any title. If they'd said Blue Book Special Report 14, surely some newsman would have said, hey, what happened to 1 through 13? We've never heard anything about them. And so they didn't say that. They didn't say who did the work. Battelle Memorial Institute in Columbus, Ohio, an outstanding research and development firm. They didn't give names of any of the people. But the press release got enormous coverage, and in it he said, on the basis of this report, we believe that no objects such as those popularly described as flying saucers have overflown the United States. Even the unknown 3% could have been identified as conventional phenomena or illusions if more complete observational data had been available. Mm-hmm. Quote. Now, that seems pretty straightforward. The only trouble is, since I had the report, is that, gee, those were all lies.
Right.
The unknowns weren't 3%. They were 21.5%. Mm-hmm. They weren't the cases for which there was not enough information. There was another 9.3% that fell in that category. Where does he get off lying? Straightforward lying. Furthermore, they did a quality evaluation of all the 3,201 sightings. I mean, that's a big study done by professional people, and they found the better the quality of the sighting, the more likely to be unexplainable. Now, this is exactly what you'd expect if the unknowns were really something different. They also asked an obvious question that any thinking person would come up with. Well, okay, you got all kinds of data on 3,201 cases. Is there any reason to think that there's any difference between the unknowns the only ones who are interested in the knowns. I mean, the popular mythology is, since you can explain most sightings, all can be. Well, they did a chi-square analysis, a fancy mathematical treatment, looking at 6 different characteristics: apparent size, color, shape, speed, that sort of thing.
Right.
They found that the probability that the unknowns were just missed knowns was less than 1%.
All right, we're just going to pause there for a second to take a quick commercial break and come right back on the air here on the Unified Field with the Stanton T. Friedman interview. Stick around.
You are listening to the Unified Field with your host, Mr. Justin Brown.
Experience the Caribbean and India without the airfare. Rani's Curry and Roti Shop serves up authentic Caribbean and Indian food. Rani's has all your favorites: curried chicken, beef, mutton, goat, buttered chicken, chickpea and potato are all available in a roti wrap. Rani's is the real deal. It's real with imported ingredients and a deal with $5 lunch specials and a 10% student discount. So come on down to Rani's at 5280 Green Street, just off Queen, and experience authentic curry and roti for yourself.
I'm David Suzuki. The average lunch or dinner travels 2,400 kilometers to get to your table. Eating local means combating global warming. The future is on your table.
Eat your way to a healthier planet. Find out how at davidsuzuki.org.
Honey, are these leftovers safe to eat?
Not sure. Let's check out healthycanadians.gc.ca.
Where?
It's a website loaded with great information about food safety, including food recalls and allergy alerts and lots of tips like how to handle leftovers.
Ugh, what about this green moldy thing?
That I don't need a website for.
Help keep your family healthy and safe. Visit healthycanadians.gc.ca and sign up to receive the latest food recalls and allergy alerts delivered right to your email. A message from the Government of Canada.
Do you have a yard you would like to garden, but just don't have the time? Do you live in an apartment and would like to have land to grow your own vegetables? Halifax Landshare partners those who want to garden with those who have the land but can't maintain a garden on their own. Landshare is free and provides access to a map and a list of willing volunteers and locations. Visit www.halifaxlandshare.ca for more information and to register your property. This summer, make new friends and enjoy fresh organic vegetables right from your doorstep.
The Dalhousie Women's Centre is a gender-inclusive, safe space for all people in the HRM. Located next to the Dowplex, the DWC offers a resource library and study space for both research and personal reading, a community cupboard and a kitchen, a common hangout space, internet services, free babysitting to single parents, and advocacy services. The DWC provides the only pre-crisis referral service in the HRM and effectively links students to a wide variety of services in the metro area. The philosophy and mandate of the DWC is social justice and the creation of a community open and equal to the diversity of all students. We offer a free meeting space for women-positive groups, as well as informal and formal gatherings. We also offer our own free lectures, workshops, first aid trainings, and peer counseling. Volunteer opportunities are available. We're open Monday through Friday, 10 to 5 at 6286 South Street, 494-2432, or at dwc@dow.ca. We're also online at dowwomencentre.ca.
60 Radio, CKDU 88.1 FM.
Hi, I'm Stanton Friedman. You're listening to Atlantic Canada's only paranormal radio broadcast on the Unified Field on CKDU.
We're talking about the existence of extraterrestrial life here on planet Earth and beyond. Visitors who have been coming now and for time immemorial. In the house tonight, in a pre-recorded interview from May of 2010, is Stanton T. Friedman, UFO investigator extraordinaire, a legend and hero in the ufological community. We have an interview here with myself, Mr. Justin Brown, on the Unified Field, Atlantic Canada's only paranormal radio broadcast. So let's get back to it, shall we?
They found that the probability that the unknowns were just missed knowns was less than 1%. Now, that doesn't prove they're alien spacecraft, but it sure gets rid of the argument that many others have tried to make. Well, Carl Sagan, we went to school for 3 years at the University of Chicago. Both grew up in New Jersey, incidentally, and just about the same age, except fortunately I'm alive, and he unfortunately isn't.
Yeah.
He has said that there are interesting sightings that aren't reliable. That's true. He has said that there are reliable sightings that aren't interesting. That's true. But then he said there are no interesting and reliable sightings, which is totally false. So that report really shook me up. I mean, I was working under security. You sort of tiptoe around the truth sometimes because you can't reveal classified information. But out and out blatant lying like this, and I should add, there's an article on my website, www.stantonfriedman.com, Government UFO Lies. It's a long article because there are lots of lies, but lying bothers me. I mean, as a physicist, you're supposed to stick with the facts and the truth, and I have a big gray basket. I've got to say, I don't know, but flat-out lying bothered me. Anyway, that got me rolling. I joined APRO and NICAP. I didn't take the advice of one of the outstanding ufologists at that time, a Frenchman named Amy Michel, wrote several good books. I wrote him asking for his advice, saying I was intrigued, and he said, no, don't get involved in ufology. It's hardly something you want to get mixed up in, even though he had done some good investigation. I didn't follow his advice, needless to say.
Right. Thank goodness.
So that, and even my giving lectures, when I found Special Report 14, we'd talk at lunch where I worked. I was working on fusion rockets for deep space propulsion and compact nuclear reactors and stuff like that. Brown bag lunches out in the walnut orchards of California. And I wasn't going public at all, just colleagues. I joined APRO and NICAP to get their newsletters. That job fell through. I think I set a record for working on canceled government-sponsored research and development programs in the States more than anybody. I didn't intend to do that, but that's the way it happened. Anyway, I wound up in Indianapolis, where I met Frank Edwards, who'd had a very successful book, Flying Saucers Serious Business. Now, Frank was a newsman, radio especially, and had a big following around the country, and he was active in NICAP. And I got to know him a bit, and when he came out with his book, he sent me a copy. By now, I was working for Westinghouse in Pittsburgh because the General Motors Allison Division Compact Nuclear Reactor Development Program got canceled, of course. So I was in Pittsburgh working on nuclear rockets, and we did test some of those. That was exciting. And I wrote Frank after reading the book. I said, Frank, I want to do something. I want to go public. I think it's about time. You know everybody. Give me some names. So he did know all kinds of people everywhere. And we had a little group in Pittsburgh. We sponsored a lecture he gave there in Pittsburgh. And he gave me some names. And one of them was the producer for an aptly named radio show, Contact.
All right.
In Pittsburgh on KDKA, which is one of the biggest and oldest radio stations in the country. And I called the producer, and it was one of those, don't call us, we'll call you. And less than a month later, they called me because somebody had canceled at the last minute for the program. It's not that they wanted me. I would call half a dozen people beforehand. And they called me at 6:30 to do a program at 7.
Jeez.
And I live close to the station, so I could do that. Anyway, that was my first program. And I wasn't as good then as handling hosts who don't know what they're talking about. I'm better now.
Right. What year was that you did that?
That was 1967. And somebody at work at Westinghouse heard the program. It was a very popular program, 7 o'clock at night, so, a lot of people listening. And a gal at work, a technical assistant, was involved with a book review club. And they were reading Frank's book. And she asked me if I would speak to her group in her living room.